시작합니다.
Title: Memories of Camp. Chapter 1: Meeting by Chance. Mary was excited about summer camp. She had never been to camp before. Her mom helped her pack a big backpack with clothes, a flashlight, and some snacks. Mary put her teddy bear in her backpack. And she also put her always carry beads in her pocket. Mary couldn't wait to meet new friends and have fun. When she arrived at camp, she saw many kids. Some were playing games, and others were talking and laughing. Mary felt a little shy because she did not know anyone. She held her mom's hand tightly as they walked to her cabin. Mary went to her cabin and chose a bed by the window. Just then, a boy walked in. He had curly hair and bright blue eyes. "Hi, I'm Hans," he said, smiling. He put his backpack on the bed next to Mary's. Mary smiled back. "I'm Mary," she replied. They talked a little and found out they liked the same things. They both loved to swim, play games, and explore. Hans showed Mary a small toy car he brought with him, and Mary showed Hans her favorite book. "Do you want to be friends?" asked Hans. "Yes, let's be friends," said Mary happily. That night, they sat together at the campfire. They listened to the camp counselors tell stories and sing songs. Mary and Hans roasted marshmallows and made s'mores. As the stars twinkled in the sky, Mary felt happy and excited for the days ahead. Chapter 2: Exploring the Camp. The next day, Mary and Hans decided to explore the camp. They saw the big lake, the tall trees, and the fun playground. "Let's go to the lake," said Hans. "Okay," said Mary. They ran to the lake and saw other kids swimming. The water was clear and cool. Mary and Hans joined them and splashed in the water. They played tag and had races to see who could swim the fastest. "This is so much fun," said Mary, laughing. She splashed Hans, and he splashed her back. Hans agreed. "I love summer camp," he said. After swimming, they played games on the playground. They climbed the jungle gym, slid down the slides, and swung on the swings. Hans showed Mary how to pump her legs to swing higher, and soon they were both soaring into the air. "We're having the best day ever," said Mary. "Yes, we are," said Hans. They played hide and seek with some other kids and made new friends. Later, they joined a nature hike led by one of the camp counselors. They learned about different plants and animals. Mary and Hans collected pretty leaves and rocks to keep as souvenirs. In the evening, they had a big camp dinner. Everyone sat at long tables and shared stories about their day. Mary and Hans sat together, talking about all the fun things they did. As they went to bed that night, Mary felt very happy. She was glad she had met Hans and made so many new friends. She couldn't wait to see what adventures the next day would bring. Chapter 3: Overcoming Fear. One night, there was a big storm. The thunder was loud, and the lightning was bright. Mary felt scared. She hugged her teddy bear tightly. And she held the lucky bead tightly in her hand. Hans saw Mary was scared. "It's okay, Mary," he said softly. "I'm here with you." Mary nodded, but she still felt scared. The thunder boomed again, and she jumped. Hans sat next to her on her bed. "Let's count the seconds between the thunder and lightning," Hans suggested. They counted together. 1, 2, 3. Boom! The thunder came again. "See, it's getting farther away," said Hans. Mary smiled a little. "Thank you, Hans," she said. "You're a good friend." Hans told Mary a funny story about his dog to distract her from the storm. "My dog, Max, is so silly. He once tried to catch his own tail and fell over." Mary giggled at the story. They talked about their favorite things, like ice cream and cartoons. Slowly, Mary began to feel less scared. The storm outside started to calm down. Hans stayed with Mary until the thunder stopped. They watched the rain tap against the window. "Rain is nice when it's not so loud," said Mary. "Yes, it helps the plants grow," said Hans. "And it makes everything look fresh and clean." They decided to make a plan for the next day. "Let's build a fort in the woods," suggested Hans. "That sounds fun," said Mary. "We can use sticks and leaves." As they talked about their fort, Mary felt her fears melt away. She knew that with Hans by her side, she could face anything. Chapter 4: The Great Race. One day, the camp had a big race. All the kids were excited. They gathered at the starting line, ready to run. "I want to win," said Hans. He was bouncing on his toes, full of energy. "Me too," said Mary. She felt nervous but determined. They lined up with the other kids. When the whistle blew, they started running. Hans ran fast, and so did Mary. They felt the wind on their faces and the ground beneath their feet. But then, Mary tripped and fell. She hurt her knee and started to cry. Hans saw Mary fall. He stopped running and went back to her. "Are you okay?" he asked, helping her up. "My knee hurts," said Mary, wiping her tears. Hans helped Mary to the nurse. He stayed with her until she felt better. The nurse cleaned Mary's knee and put a bandage on it. "Thank you for helping me," said Mary. "Friends always help each other," said Hans, smiling. Mary watched as the other kids finished the race. She felt a little sad that she couldn't finish, but she was glad Hans stayed with her. Later, the camp counselors gave out medals. Even though Mary didn't win, Hans gave her his medal. "You deserve this," he said. "Thank you, Hans," said Mary, touched by his kindness. That evening, they sat by the campfire and roasted marshmallows again. They talked about their day and laughed about funny moments. Mary felt lucky to have a friend like Hans. Chapter 5: The Talent Show. At camp, there was a talent show. Mary and Hans decided to join. "What should we do?" asked Mary. "Let's sing a song," said Hans. They practiced every day. Mary was a little nervous, but Hans encouraged her. "You can do it, Mary," he said. "We'll do it together." They chose a fun song they both liked and practiced the words and dance moves. Mary and Hans helped each other remember the lyrics and steps. They even made up some funny actions to go with the song. On the night of the talent show, they were a bit scared. The stage was big, and there were many people watching. "I'm a little scared," said Mary. "Me too," said Hans. "But we can do it. We'll just have fun." When it was their turn, they walked onto the stage holding hands. They took a deep breath and started to sing. All the kids and counselors clapped and cheered. Mary and Hans smiled at each other, feeling proud and happy. "You were great, Mary," said Hans. "You too, Hans," said Mary. They felt proud and happy. They knew they did their best and had fun. After the show, many kids came up to them. "You guys were awesome," said one girl. "Thank you," said Mary and Hans together. That night, they couldn't stop talking about the show. They felt proud of themselves and each other. As they went to bed, Mary thought about how much fun she had with Hans. She knew they would always have great memories of the talent show. Chapter 6: The Treasure Hunt. One day, the counselors planned a treasure hunt. The kids had to find clues and solve puzzles. Mary and Hans teamed up. They got their first clue and read it together. "Look under the big rock by the lake," it said. "Let's go," said Mary. They ran to the lake and looked under the big rock. They found a piece of paper with a riddle on it. "What has keys but can't open locks?" Hans read aloud. "A piano," said Mary. They followed the next clue to the music room. They found another clue inside a piano. They followed the clues, helping each other along the way. They climbed trees, crossed a small stream, and looked under bushes. Each clue led them to a new adventure. "We make a great team," said Hans. "Yes, we do," said Mary. Finally, they found the treasure box hidden in a hollow tree. It was filled with candies and little toys. "We did it," said Mary, jumping up and down. "Yes, we did," said Hans. They shared the treasure with the other kids. Everyone was happy. They all sat together and enjoyed the treats. That night, as they went to bed, Mary and Hans talked about the treasure hunt. They were proud of how they worked together. "Today was amazing," said Mary. "Yes, it was," said Hans. They knew they would always remember the fun they had finding the treasure. Chapter 7: Last Campfire. On the last night of camp, there was a big campfire. All the kids sat around the fire, singing songs and roasting marshmallows. Mary and Hans sat together, feeling a little sad. "Camp is almost over," said Mary softly. "I know," said Hans. "I'm going to miss you, Mary." "I'm going to miss you too, Hans," said Mary. They made a promise to write letters to each other. "We will always be friends," they said together. The camp counselors told stories about their own camp experiences. Mary and Hans listened, thinking about all the fun times they had. They sang their favorite camp songs and danced. The fire crackled and popped, casting a warm glow on everyone's faces. Hans looked at Mary. "I'm glad we met," he said. "Me too," said Mary. "This has been the best summer ever." They sat quietly, watching the flames dance. They knew they would always remember this moment. As the fire died down, they joined the other kids in a big circle. They all held hands and sang one last song. It was a song about friendship and memories. Mary felt a tear in her eye. She looked at Hans and saw he was a little sad too. But they smiled at each other, knowing they would always be friends. Chapter 8, Saying Goodbye. The next morning, it was time to go home. Mary and Hans packed their bags and walked to the buses. Mary and Hans hugged each other tightly. "Goodbye, Hans," said Mary, trying not to cry. "Goodbye, Mary," said Hans, feeling sad. They exchanged addresses so they could write to each other. "Promise you'll write," said Mary. "I promise," said Hans. "And you promise too." "I promise," said Mary. They waved as they got on different buses. As the buses drove away, they looked back and waved one last time. Mary felt a tear roll down her cheek. She would never forget the fun times at camp with Hans. She looked out the window, holding the friendship bracelet Hans had given her. Hans looked out the window, thinking about all the adventures they had. He's holding a shiny bead that Mary gave him. Even though they were sad to say goodbye, they knew they would always have the memories of camp and their special friendship. Mary and Hans wrote letters to each other every week. They shared stories about school, their families, and their new adventures. Even though they were far apart, their friendship remained strong. They knew they would always be friends, no matter what. And so, they went home with hearts full of happy memories and the hope that they would meet again someday.
구독과 좋아요 부탁드립니다. 감사합니다.